and welcome to the Talking Basketball Podcast. My name is Evan.
It's tackling basketball.
Alright. Hello everyone and welcome to the Tackling Basketball Podcast. My name is Evan.
I'm Jonathan.
And here we are to talk about all things sports, mainly football and basketball, aka NFL and NBA.
Hence tackling basketball.
Yeah.
Yeah, you get it now.
We try to be clever. It kind of works. It kind of doesn't. It's okay. We will be dipping into other sports occasionally, such as MLB, NHL, WNBA, MLS, whatever it may be. But our main focus will be on the NFL and NBA because that is where we have the most common ground in terms of sports knowledge.
A lot of smaller markets, too. I mean, we're both fans of smaller markets teams for the most part. I'm a Colorado boy, so basically every single Denver team. And he is a freak.
Yeah, and I'm from Oregon, so I have the Blazers, the Timbers, and then I'm a Packers fan for the NFL, and then a Mets fan for the MLB.
Yeah,
so I'm all over the place, and then I've adopted the Avs since moving to Denver. So I am just everywhere. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but here we are. Portland's a weird place. But you will not see us talking a whole lot about the Lakers or the Rams or
the
really
Celtics.
Any team that you see ESPN or First Take focusing on, which will be nice because we get to talk about stuff that we don't hear a lot of chat about. So
let us know what small market teams you want us to talk about.
They're more interesting, that's for sure. A lot less money to play with. But we will get right into this episode. Let us know where you want us to go with this in the future. So we will, again, be focused on mainly NFL and NBA. So, coming right off of All-Star Weekend.
Yeah, I mean, here's the great question. Why the hell would we start a podcast 2 weeks after the Super Bowl and also after the All-Star game in the NBA when we're talking about both of those things, especially like after the trade deadline? Like, we missed out on so much reaction, so much pregame, so many betting opportunities, and we're starting now. So, Evan, why did we start now instead of earlier?
The short answer is we have lives. I am recently married. Jonathan is also married.
You got married about around the time of the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I got married around the time of the Super Bowl. And then there was Valentine's Day because the NFL just had to add an extra game in and make that complicated for everybody. I recently got a dog, which prohibits me from going a lot of places because dogs. So having lives really complicates things.
Yeah.
That's okay.
So, can't promise we'll be consistent, but
we're going to try our best.
At least we'll be consistent. Let's get right into it. Since we're starting right after the All-Star game, it only makes sense to start with the All-Star game. Evan, let's get going on the that dunk contest. How do you feel about the NBA Slam Dunk Contest in 2023?
Thank God for Mac McClung. Otherwise, that would have been the worst piece of entertainment that I would have ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
And I've seen The Room. So, Mac McClung was solid for a dunk contest. Yeah. I don't think he blows anybody out of the water. He definitely doesn't compare to a Vince Carter or a Donovan Mitchell or Aaron Gordon or Zach LaVine. But he did some pretty solid dunks, some stuff that impresses you. But the other three guys were flat out horrible. And just seeing the crowd reactions, the different angle of nobody clapping or cheering when anybody else tried to dunk, especially when they had to attempt it.
He was dead
3 to 4 times.
That might be the last All-Star game that is ever in Utah. I mean, granted, it's probably not Utah's fault. Like we said, we're a small market podcast. We love you, Utah, but it was dead in that arena. Yeah. And I don't blame you at all. It was just a boring contest all around. I mean, like, we're starting with the dunk contest. We're probably planning on skipping the other two events mostly. But that skills challenge, I mean, the winning team scored like 5 baskets in a minute.
And there was more cheering during that than there was during the other 3 guys besides Mac McClung during the dunk contest.
There was. It was horrible. Part of me hates having Mac McClung in the dunk contest at all because he has 8 points in his NBA career. And it feels like we used to be in this era where, this era lasted for several decades, where only the star players went to the dunk contest, and we saw like Aaron Gordon versus Zach LaVine, one of the most electric dunk contests in 2016.
Back to back, too.
Where incredible dunks from like star players. Granted, neither of them were ever like a LeBron, but star players with fantastic athleticism and dunking abilities. And now we've resorted to a couple of like rookies and unknown guys who couldn't say no because it's their only way to get publicity, and then a guy who has kind of made the NBA but is mostly just an internet sensation for dunking.
And literally doubled his money by being in the dunk contest and winning it.
And like, I'm glad he was there, which I wish he didn't have to be, but it would have been such a horrible show without him.
And this alludes to what Stephen A. Smith was talking about today, February 20th. Go check out his clip on it. But he said it's LeBron's fault. And I couldn't agree more. The fact that you have LeBron James, one of the most electrifying dunkers in NBA history, who refused to ever do a dunk contest.
Yeah.
And who has made it so that John Morant, Zion Williamson, Aaron Gordon, Zach LaVine, these guys don't want to do the dunk contest anymore. A, because you have to spend time in the gym practicing those dunks rather than focusing on your basketball fundamentals, which I can respect. You want to focus on what's going to help your team win, but also it sucks now that we're in a place where the guys who we want to see in the dunk contest are instead focusing on shooting threes and passing rather than their athletic ability. And
you say that they don't want to dedicate the time to being in the dunk contest, and then you see John Morant go out during the actual All-Star game and like fuck around at the hoop and like have these somewhat electric dunks, or at least electric dunk attempts. And it's like, that could have been, honestly, this year it could have been a 50-point dunk.
Yeah.
You're saying that you don't want to invest the time. Really, one of the bigger arguments that they're having is there's no incentives for us. And I'm sat here like, what incentives do you want? I mean, we could offer monetary incentives. In fact, I think they do offer some monetary incentives. But you're already making like $20+ million a year. You don't care about any incentive that is reasonable.
Yeah.
So it's really just, you said it's LeBron's fault, and he started it, but everyone else is following. And like, Ja easily could have said yes. He could have even not practiced any more than he was for the All-Star game and still made it better.
And that is perfect segue into the game itself, because Mike Malone, post-game, came out and said, this is the worst game that the NBA has ever seen, and I couldn't really agree more. It was atrocious. And then he also followed up by saying, there's no way to fix it, and he's right. If you tell guys, hey, we'll give you 25, 50K for every steal and every block you have, guys are just going to laugh at you and say, yeah, I don't care.
Yeah.
And because the All-Star game has now just turned into an offensive showboat. As much fun as it was to see Dame pull up from behind half court at 48 feet and sink a three without making the net move, because that was hilarious. It's not how basketball is meant to be played. No one cares. It's everybody just measuring dick size on how well they are or how good they are at offense in basketball. But no one cares. Everybody's laughing. Guys dunk over people and the other guy laughs at them and is dapping him up and saying, congrats, bro. There's no intensity. There's no competition. The idea of making this, making it a charity competition, quote unquote, fix the game for 2 seasons, and now guys don't give a crap anymore.
And I mean, it makes sense. It makes sense that it would have fixed the game temporarily, because at first it feels like, I want to contribute for this charity, I want to win the money. And then you realize that by winning your charity money, you're just taking it away from a different charity. Like, you're not changing what happens with the money. You're just, it's pointless.
Well, the NBA is also, what is it, $250,000 per quarter? I mean, each of these guys can go out individually and donate more than that, and it wouldn't hurt him at all.
Yeah.
So the NBA hasn't made it worth it at all to these guys. And when you combine the load management situation in the NBA, and then you ask them to go out and try their hardest in an All-Star game, of course they're not going to give a crap. Because it's currently a 9-day break to rest and recover. And especially this year when you have Giannis tearing a ligament, or not tearing a ligament, but hurting himself, LeBron hurting his finger. Honestly, I see next year the situation getting even worse. Guys are going to go, LeBron tried to block somebody and hurt himself. Giannis tried to chase somebody down and hurt himself. Why would I want to injure myself in the All-Star game when the playoffs are a couple months away? Like that.
It didn't really happen to either of those players, but it kind of happened to both. Both were on load management coming in. Both, barely aggravated, or probably, Giannis played a possession, which he maybe shouldn't have even done that, on all honesty, but he played a possession and he got benched because he wanted to preserve himself, which honestly is a really good thing. A lot of people are getting upset at a lot of players, and honestly I've joined in on some of the banter, whole Kawhi load management, I'm not paying this much money to go watch the stars be on the bench. All fair points from the fans' point of view, but also, especially as a Denver fan, I just want to win a championship. And if I go to a game that doesn't have Jokic, I get to enjoy some of the young stars instead. I get both sides of the argument. I get load management. The All-Star game itself is broken. Is there a way to fix it?
I don't think so. All-Star game, it's essentially turned into at least with the All-Star game, the guys that are selected for it are truly the guys who should be selected for it. It hasn't reached NFL Pro Bowl levels of Jared Goff making the Pro Bowl when, let's be honest, he shouldn't have. But so at least the guys getting picked makes sense, but the game itself has devolved to a point where I don't see them fixing this. Adam Silver and the rest of the NBA board will now have to decide whether they want to keep going with the All-Star game or if they want to switch it to something else. There's been the talk of the mid-season tournament, and there's an argument to be made that if you introduce an in-season tournament, that you would then do away with All-Star Weekend because
it'll be just like All-Star Weekend.
But that's the problem. And they're talking about bringing in international teams, which, for being honest, that would just be essentially what...
That's what preseason is.
That's what preseason is, and that's what the Olympics are every year, where the American teams would wipe the floor with all these international teams.
Less now,
but also all the best international players are on NBA teams, so it wouldn't be pretty. But then you also run into the issue of what if an international player decks and injures an NBA player? You can't suspend them. There's no penalty that's going to occur.
Right.
So do you really want to bring in international teams who could cause that sort of mess? So that's something that Adam Silver will have to figure out.
Yeah, the All-Star game may be broken beyond repair. The one thing I can think of, and the one thing that, it felt like it worked for the last year or two, where they had this fourth quarter where it's based off of point differential. So it's no longer a time limit, meaning that if you want to win, you have to get stops. And that worked until this year, and I think the reason it broke this year is because there was, a 16, 18-point lead going into the fourth quarter. My Hail Mary fix-it is this. The reason that the last two, especially fourth quarters, were entertaining was because the last two fourth quarters were close and point maxed. Mm-hmm. What if every single quarter was just first to 25 wins?
Yeah. That could, you definitely see defense there if you got people that actually care about the charity money, which that's a big if. But it worked the first 2 years, so who knows? We now want to move on to the All-Star Game draft that occurred. I personally like the way that they set it up this year, where they had reserves picked first and then starters. It made it a little bit more interesting. But what we want to do is go through and do a redraft of the players. I, Evan, am going to take Team Giannis.
I'm going to take Team LeBron.
So I will be picking first from the reserves, and Jonathan will be taking first pick for the starters. For my first pick for the reserves, I'll be doing what Giannis did. I'm going to take Damian Lillard. I think as I know, I'm a Portland boy.
Damian.
I'm a homer. But as a power forward, I think taking a good point guard and the best point guard available in Damian Lillard makes sense. I also think, outside of this, from Giannis's perspective, he knows LeBron loves Dame, and it's a little bit of a mental game there, taking Damian Lillard away from him. LeBron was clearly pissed after he picked him. But I love that pick. I think taking Dame first in the reserves makes a whole lot of sense.
Yeah, I mean, I'm right there with you. I easily would have gunned Dame if you hadn't. But with what I've got left, I mean, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander has been electric this year, and he's also, I mean, he's exactly the kind of player you want in the All-Star game, where he's a little bit showboaty, he's a little bit electric, a little bit just gonna take the ball, drive it to the hoop, and score. And we both know as soon as you get going 5 miles an hour in the All-Star game, everyone steps aside. So he'll reach 5 miles an hour most of the time. And Team LeBron's going to be looking pretty.
Nice. I'm going to follow that up by, again, sticking true to Giannis's game plan here and taking Jrue Holiday. Think going double guard, getting your 1 and your 2 out of the way early. Also, again, from Giannis's perspective, you got to take your teammate, man. I mean, you can't be the guy that lets your teammate sitting the last pick. I mean, that just looked horrible. But Jrue has been looking pretty damn nice this year, has a solid shooting percentage, underrated on defense as a 2, I think. Not top tier, but it also is not often recognized for how good he is on defense. So I think that was honestly a very good pick by Giannis, and I'm going to stick with it.
All right. So, 4th overall for Team LeBron. I am going to leave Anthony Edwards on the board still, the 2nd overall pick. I'm going to go with Jaylen Brown, actually staying true to Team LeBron's 4th overall pick. I mean, a lot of the game comes down to who cares more, and Jaylen Brown definitely fits that bill. But he's also a really fundamentals shooter, really good from the 3-point line. He showed that off in the actual All-Star game, and I think that you just get anybody. You get Shai driving to the basket when the reserves are in, kicking it out to Jaylen Brown. He's going to knock down everything you give him.
With my 3rd pick and the 5th overall, I'm going to go completely opposite. I'm going to go with Giannis's last pick, actually, and go Domantas Sabonis. I think big men in both the reserves and the starters were seriously undervalued this year. And really the only thing I have to say about Domantas Sabonis, he's making the Sacramento Kings look good. I'll repeat that. The Kings look good because of Domantas Sabonis. Great perimeter shooter, great interior defender, great interior scorer. He really does it all. He's a good passer, obviously not on the level of your man Nikola Jokic, but he is a very good big man. Really contributes to the team, and I think pairing him at center with Giannis at power forward, I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. All right. So 6th overall, Team LeBron's going to take Pascal Siakam. I mean,
you're just picking from my team, damn it.
Yeah, I am. Giannis drafted well. He's just the best forward on this board.
Yep.
And again, ball dominant guy, able to take it to the hoop, do whatever he wants.
7th pick now for myself. I'm going to go Paul George. Fill in that 3 position. I think Paul George has kind of been under the radar this year, but has been playing very well for the Clippers. When he's been healthy, of course, Paul George with the normal injury bug that hits him every single year. But very good shooting percentage, contributing a lot, both offensively and defensively, actually. So I think he's a great pick there.
Yeah. All right. Happy that he's lasted this far a little bit. I'm going to stop the fall for Anthony Edwards.
Yep.
He is still really young, but a really great player. And I think that part of the reason that he was taken so high is LeBron honestly sort of likes to use this draft to start to coerce a little bit. And I think that he would love to play with a guy like Anthony Edwards.
Yeah.
Like, he is just a fantastic guard archetype to pair alongside of LeBron. And I think that fits really well here.
For sure. My next pick, I'm going De'Aaron Fox. Going back to the guard position, pairing him with his teammate Domantas Sabonis. They've been looking great together. Fox athletically is also just one of the top tier athletical talents in the game of basketball right now. Athletical is 100% a word. I just coined it.
Athletical.
It's a new word. But he's been shooting much, much better this year. He's been kind of the floor general for the Kings. He's been playing phenomenally, and I think he's a good pick right there.
Yeah. All right. Part of me wants to get a little bit cute here, but I think that Giannis got a little cute with the starters in the same way and thought, oh, there's no way this other team is going to take this same position they've already filled. But it's time to just grab Bam Adebayo.
Yeah. You weren't going to take him, I was.
Yeah. He is going to do everything you need on the inside in an All-Star game.
Next one, I'm going to go with DeMar. I'm going to go with the last Giannis guy, Giannis team guy on the board. DeMar has been playing his butt off this year. And, of course, as everybody knows him, the mid-range king. And he has continued to live up to that mantle, continues to play good defense. Absolutely deserved a spot on the All-Star team this year and spot on the winning team, Team Giannis.
All right. 12th overall pick. I think I'm going Jaren Jackson Jr. I mean, I've always been a fan of his game, a defensive-minded guy who is mostly a role player on offense. And honestly, role players don't excel in the All-Star game, but I just respect him too much to let him fall much further in this draft.
That's fair. My last pick, I'm going to go with Julius Randle. Leave Tyrese Halliburton on the board. Julius Randle has been doing everything he can to make or keep the Knicks relevant this year. He's been playing his butt off. Great rebounder. Has been very much improved on defense and in his shooting ability. So
yeah, honestly, I'm a little okay with you leaving me Tyrese Halliburton.
Yeah,
he's been really solid for the Pacers this year. Young guy who only is going to get better in this league, and the Pacers sort of feel like the Nuggets of 4 years ago. They are going to continue to draft well and develop well, and they might turn into something here. Yep. It's going to be hard for them to find their Nikola Jokic because, honestly, we got lucky there. But they are going to be a solid team and consistent for sure. But that's it for the reserves. It's time to move on to the starters.
And Team LeBron picked first, so Jonathan will get first pick. And I have a feeling I know who he might take number one overall, but we'll see here.
You know, I'm really tempted for Nikola Jokic because, I mean, let's all face it, he is the best player out of any of these starters, including the captains. But he doesn't give a shit about the All-Star game. In fact, the only shits that he gives about the All-Star game is to set other people up for success. And we both saw what happens when he does that. He throws up a nice pass to Kyrie Irving, who's like, yeah, give it back to you, bro. Finish it off with a really nice, sick alley-oop. And Jokic is surprised because he throws an assist. He expects you to throw it down.
Yeah.
He's not the showboaty. He's not the flashy guy. And therefore, he's not actually that good in the All-Star game.
Fair enough.
So, I'm going to get this started with Jason Tatum. I mean, this guy put up a ton of points in the All-Star game because he cared and because he's athletic. That's all that you really need here. Just start gaining some momentum towards the hoop and you're going to score.
Like it. Like that pick. I'm going to follow it up with Luka Doncic. And he didn't score a ton of points in the All-Star game, but I still think Luka's the right pick here. Luka has been flat out dominant this year. And the pairing of him with Giannis is just beautiful. I love that so much. And I love the fact that Luka can fit your... he can play small forward, he can play shooting guard, he can play point guard, he can play wherever you need him, wherever you have a vacancy on the court.
Yeah, for sure. Next up, I'm going to take Joel Embiid. Yeah, I mean, this guy too, he is strong, athletic, in the paint, able to score on the inside whenever he wants, and in an All-Star game, no one's going to contest him. So, basically he'll get anything he wants, and what he wants is to score.
Like it. Follow that up with Ja Morant. Like you said, Ja showed it. Ja wanted to showboat, which is what the All-Star Game is about. He did a few dunks that really didn't need to happen, but they did because it's the All-Star Game. And Ja absolutely deserves it. He's, again, similar to Luka, he has carried the Grizzlies this year. He is the reason why the Grizzlies are relevant, and phenomenal player.
Yeah? All right. It's time to take Jokic. I mean, again, he's not going to score you a ton of points here because he hasn't learned how the All-Star Game works yet, but he is still going to be good for your team. He's going to play off other players. He's going to open up opportunities, and it's worth it.
Yeah. And, well, I guess with only one big man left on the board, I kind of am forced to take Lauri Markkanen, but I am honestly okay with that. Yeah. Lauri is my personal candidate for Most Improved Player of the Year. I really don't think there's anybody more fitting of the award. Lauri has gone from, 13 points per game to 24 points per game. The dude's shooting very well. He is literally carrying the Utah Jazz, a franchise everybody thought would be the worst in the league, and he has made them look decent. And honestly, when it comes to the All-Star Game, having your two bigs be Giannis and Lauri, perfectly okay with that.
Oh, for sure. All right. 2 guys left on the board. I'm taking Donovan Mitchell, I think. I mean, just really talented, really electric at the rim, which, if you're looking for a guy that will electrify the crowd at this game, and his name isn't Ja Morant, then it's Donovan Mitchell. And he didn't get as many open dunk opportunities as I probably hoped for him in the actual All-Star Game, but he is quite a showman.
Yeah. And I'm perfectly okay with pairing Kyrie Irving with my team, putting him with his new teammate Luka. And Kyrie, I mean, ice in his veins when he wants to be good at basketball and when he cares. So I'm good with that. So we may have to do a 2K sim to see whose All-Star team would beat the other.
Not a bad idea.
So maybe we'll come back next week and provide the results of that. But I feel we did a much better job of making our teams competitive than LeBron and Giannis did. I think LeBron...
Mostly better than LeBron.
Yeah. Giannis did a phenomenal job, mainly due to the incompetence of LeBron.
LeBron's strategy over the last couple of years, which has worked for the most part. I mean, he was 3-0 going into this year as a captain. His strategy was to just build up bigs on his roster, to work the inside game, and it's worked in the past. But this year, as soon as you drive to the hoop, the bigs get out of your way, which means honestly guards were the advantage for paint scoring as well as perimeter scoring.
Yeah, and this year you had Jason Tatum taking 18 three-point attempts, Mitchell 17, and Dame 20. So everybody was just jacking up threes, and that's how the majority of the scoring went. So.
Yep. It's time to introduce a segment that will run for probably the entire lifetime of this podcast. We are going to call it 100 Units. This is our sports betting sort of challenge that we're going to be doing. Basically, we don't want to share our finances with you. We don't want to say, I'm betting X dollars on this game because... 2 reasons. We both have wives, which probably don't want to know that number. And second of all, you guys probably shouldn't be betting that number. You maybe should be betting higher. You maybe should be betting lower. But by generalizing this, we're calling this segment 100 units, meaning a unit is about 1% of what you expect to bet or lose within the course of a year. And we're just going to be throwing out units on a lot of different bets, seeing how those bets stick. And we're going to be keeping track of this over the course of the week, the month, the quarter, the year, trying to figure out who is the better sports bettor. Are either of us able to be positive on our sports bets?
Yeah.
So, Evan, do you have one to get us going?
Yeah. And we'll preface this, of course, by saying please gamble responsibly. Don't
Yeah.
Don't bet your house on any bet.
Significantly less than that.
Yeah, betting should be just a little bit and enough to keep you interested in whatever game you're watching, no matter who's playing. Because when it comes to our favorite teams, obviously you're engaged, but we like to bet just a little bit to root for, quote unquote, Travis Kelce gets 75 yards in the Super Bowl, even though we don't give a shit about either of those teams in the Super Bowl. So, the bet that I have for this week is a parlay for the NBA, 4-way parlay, all money lines. I prefer to bet money lines rather than over-under or anything like that.
Or the spread.
Yeah, or the spread, because money line is just easier. My brain can understand it a little bit better. I'm a simple guy. So I have Denver Nuggets at plus 106. I have Orlando Magic at minus 295.
Against who's?
Oh, Denver against the Cleveland Cavaliers. Magic against the Detroit Pistons. New Orleans Pelicans at the Toronto Raptors at plus 122. And the Portland Trailblazers at the Sacramento Kings at plus 180. I think my feeling on each one of those games, I feel good about every single one of those. I'm honestly a bit confused as to why the Nuggets have plus odds against the Cavs, especially after they just bought out Kevin Love. I'm confused by that move. Orlando Magic with the Pistons, that should be obvious. Pelicans at the Raptors. Pelicans will be healthy coming out of the break here. I think Zion and crew will come in wanting to make a statement here, especially since they've started to slowly slip down the standings in the West a little bit. And same with the Portland Trailblazers. I think the Portland Trailblazers will be a bit more healthy. Yusuf Nurkic should be back. Damian Lillard is pissed off. And I can see Dame going out there and dropping 40 or 50 points because when Dame's mad, that's what he does.
Yeah. What are your odds on that parlay and how many units?
Odds are total is plus 1,614, and I bet half a unit on that one.
All right. Well, I'm going to be much simpler than that. I have found that I am actually... we're going to find out soon because of this keeping track. I find that I am above average at individual betting, and I've lost on every single parlay I've ever entered. It's always like, if I had bet these individually, I would have made money. But I didn't. Like, for the All-Star game, even. Mm-hmm. I would have made, like, a solid 4 or 5 units on that. But I lost one of my legs, and I lost it all. So, here I'm sticking simple. I'm just going Nuggets over Cleveland. Jokic is probable in the game, so it's a little bit of a risk that he might not play or he might be minutes limited. But here's the thing. He's never minutes limited when he plays. If Jokic is able to start the game, he will be there for the whole game, and he will win. He is currently on the longest winning streak in the entire NBA history for anyone who scores a triple-double in that game. So, 25 straight games that he scored a triple-double, he has won that game. And I think that Cleveland is the perfect game to take advantage of a lot of rebounding and assists. They're a little bit weaker in a lot of ways on defense that we complement well. And I think that we get that triple-double. I might have to place that bet later, but the bigger one, Denver money line with plus odds, it's kind of a rarity this season. I'm going to take it wherever I can.
Yeah. Fair.
But yeah, moving on a little bit from that, we've got... it's about time we talk about the NFL. And we are an NBA and an NFL podcast, but we picked a horrible time to start talking about the NFL. Except it's the perfect time to talk about just irrational hopes for our futures and what we want our own teams to do, what we think will be the final outcome of the season. Let's just go ahead and kick this off. We both placed a NFL futures bet. Mm-hmm. Futures are a little limited on the NFL betting landscape right now, but Evan, let's go ahead and hear your big old parlay there.
Yeah, and I believe we are both using FanDuel, so that's the other thing I like to preface. At least for me, all odds that I give are coming off of FanDuel, mainly because that's what I use. So if you go to other websites, don't expect to get the exact same odds. But For my MVP for this next season, and then also the Super Bowl winner, I picked Justin Herbert of the now Los Angeles Chargers to win MVP this next season, and the Cincinnati Bengals to win the Super Bowl. Justin Herbert, now with Kellen Moore, offensive coordinator for the Cowboys last year, I think Kellen Moore will unlock that Chargers offense. I think they'll finally find a way to make Justin Herbert not have to do literally everything, because the poor guy, him and Austin Eckler, are just getting beat up and running for their lives every single freaking play.
Yeah.
And I think Kellen Moore taking over for Staley, their head coach, with play calling, will be great for the Chargers. That offense is going to look a lot better. It's going to be deadlier. Justin, with that electric arm, doesn't make a ton of mental mistakes or forced mistakes. I think he'll be phenomenal. And then the Bengals. I mean, they got close this year. They lost to the Chiefs, which losing to the Chiefs is really not something to be upset about. The Chiefs are amazing. But I think the Bengals are an incredibly young team. I mean, that offense is Joe Burrow, who just had his, third year in the league. Jamar Chase is now going to be going into his third year. Burrow going into his fourth year, and Higgins going into his fourth year. The main core of that offense is still very young, going to continue to get better. That O-line is going to get better. It was better this year, but I think can even progress further. I think Zach Taylor will continue to figure out that offense. They'll now have more information about the Chiefs, the Bills, other better teams in the AFC to be able to beat them, game plan better for them to make it to the Super Bowl. And then honestly, let's be real, the AFC is where it's at currently in the NFL. There's not many NFC teams besides maybe the Philadelphia Eagles that are challenging the power of the top teams in the AFC.
Yeah. I mean, I love the Bengals pick there. I think that they give fantastic odds for how well they've been performing, especially in the playoffs. Because you look at the past 2 seasons, they've made the conference championship 2 seasons in a row, even advanced to the Super Bowl a couple years ago. And, I mean, they're getting...
And realistically, they were a holding call away from winning the Super Bowl over the Rams.
Yeah, and they're plus 900 right now, which is really solid. Herbert, I'm not the biggest fan of. Mm-hmm. I think that he's a fantastic player for sure, but I think that he is not quite worth the odds. I think that he's a little bit overrated, but also a decent pick. I'm going to make a worse pick, though. So, I'm a hometown guy, and frankly, one of the things that I hate betting on is against my team. So, you won't ever see me picking Cleveland over Denver. Now, granted, most of the time I'll just avoid an unfavorable bet, but even if it's really favorable for the opponent, I'm not picking them. I want to bet on what I want to happen. And one of those things is a Broncos Super Bowl victory.
And I mean, now with Sean Payton at head coach and potentially Rex Ryan as defensive coordinator, a better OC, with that defense and realistically with the offensive weapons, that could be a reality if he can fix Russell Wilson.
I mean, it's really, really unlikely, but the odds are equally unlikely. It's plus 3,500, which I think is fairly fair.
Yeah.
I think that the Broncos are just a really hard team to understand this upcoming season. It's hard to know, will Russell Wilson be fixed? And I honestly think yes, because Sean Payton is a brilliant offensive mind, and our previous head coach, he who must not be named, was... he never wanted to coach the style of football that Russell Wilson needed. Both of them were set up for failure. Honestly, I do not think that Hackett should have been a head coach ever, but he was set up to fail because he is a one-system guy, and he was sent to coach a team and a quarterback who needed to be in a different system. And so they were both set up for failure, and I think that this year, both the coach and the player will be set up for success, giving me a better than plus 3,500 odds. And then I also parlayed that with an MVP, which, again, my parlays never go well. But I picked Josh Allen. His odds are barely worse than Herbert's at plus 700, and he is, I think he's the best quarterback in the league right now. He has not gotten the award. Has he gotten the award at all yet?
No, I think the highest he's ever come is second last year to Mahomes. I think this year he came in third or fourth because he technically regressed this year. He had more interceptions, more forced errors, which not necessarily all his fault. The Bills were hit with the injury bug. There was some stuff going on.
Injuries, not a ton of receiving depth outside of Stephon Diggs, but I think that Josh Allen can pull it together, that his team can be enough and successful enough next year to give him solid odds at winning that award. So
he's also in a much easier defensive division.
It's true.
For sure. I mean, he plays the Dolphins, who have a decent defense, but the Patriots and the Jets' defenses are definitely currently not anything to write home about. So
So all in, that parlay gives me plus 28,700, which is I'm pretty happy with that. So I mean, like I said, my parlays never go well. One of those two things will hit. I promise you that. I don't know which one yet. I really hope it's Broncos Super Bowl.
Probably the Josh Allen thing will hit.
I'm going to be pissed that Josh Allen screwed me over on this parlay, but I'm hoping that the Broncos hit the Super Bowl. My big parlay this year was about 8 months ago. I said the Denver Nuggets, the Colorado Avalanche, the Colorado Mammoth, which is our local lacrosse team, and the Denver Broncos would all win their respective championships. And the Mammoth and Avalanche both hit. The Nuggets' odds have dramatically improved on that, and the Broncos won.
And he smartly didn't include the Colorado Rockies in that because they're garbage.
I had them in a separate parlay because I was like, hey, if I package the Rockies with the Broncos, then 10 cents wins me $1 million.
There's a reason for that, because it's not going to fucking happen.
Yeah. But, maybe.
Now time to get into some irrational fan rant. So I, of course, as a Green Bay Packers fan, will be talking mainly about the Packers and then how I foresee kind of the season going for them. Jonathan about the Denver Broncos, which a lot of changes now for the Broncos, so we'll see how their season turns out. Want me to kick things off here?
Yeah, go for it.
All right, so obviously being a Green Bay Packers fan is an emotional roller coaster at best. Every single year, solid odds to win the Super Bowl and haven't been able to pull it off since 2010. At this point, trade Aaron Rodgers. If he doesn't come out of his fucking darkness retreat, whatever the hell he's doing right now, and decide to retire, I say the best option is to trade him. And not because I don't believe in Aaron Rodgers anymore. I still think Aaron Rodgers is an incredibly talented quarterback. I think a lot of the struggles that occurred this year for him were very much because he was working with brand new wide receivers in Romeo Doubs and Christian Watson, who he'd never thrown to before. They were hit with the injury bug, so they didn't get a lot of work in. There was just a lot of growing pains there. So I don't really blame the offense on Aaron Rodgers this year. I don't think that's fully fair. But at this point, if with the youth of the rest of the team, with the exception of Rodgers, I think if the Packers want to still be good in 2, 3, 4 years, the best option is to embrace a young quarterback, get them used to the young receiving core that we have, the young defense that we have.
Jordan Love, man.
Young quarterback, whether that be Jordan Love or fingers crossed somebody else. Because while Jordan Love has shown flashes, I'm not sure. I'm fully convinced that he's the best option. So I think trading Aaron Rodgers.
What do you think you'd get for Aaron?
Couple first, maybe. Depending on the team. Like, if you trade him to the Jets, who are desperate as hell. Because the Jets, I feel like the Jets are in a place. I feel like the Jets are in a place where outside of Zach Wilson, if they bring in a veteran quarterback, they think they have a shot at the AFC East, which honestly, not bad thinking. I think that's fair, or at least wild card. Probably can't beat the Bills.
Yeah.
But I think they'd be willing to give up a little bit more. I think the Raiders might be able to do that. A lot of chat about Devontae Adams trying to bring in Aaron Rodgers, which is hilarious after Devontae wanted to leave Aaron Rodgers for Derek Carr, but that's a whole nother thing. So maybe he goes there. I think there are teams that would absolutely be willing to give up some for Aaron Rodgers. At this point, as a Packers fan, I think as long as we get 1 first, maybe a couple seconds, obviously 2 firsts would be preferable.
Yeah.
But a first, couple seconds, whatever, move off of that massive contract. And then I personally, and I'm sure there are plenty of Packers fans out there who do not feel the same way, I would love to see the Packers trade up and try to grab Will Levis.
Okay.
Bryce Young and CJ Stroud, obviously out of reach. Both of those guys are probably going top 8 or top 10. I don't think the Packers can quite...
Top 5.
Or top 5 even, honestly. Yeah. Packers obviously can't trade up into that atmosphere. No one's going to allow that to happen, and they would have to give up the entire future draft capital for the Green Bay Packers to make that happen.
Yeah.
But somewhere in the early teens, Will Levis will probably still be there. Will Levis, to me, very similar to a Josh Allen type. I'm obviously not going to say he's going to turn into Josh Allen because Josh Allen is otherworldly.
Yeah.
But in terms of what I've seen from him in college, where big arm talent, has that mobility, can run, can truck through people, but currently in college, the thing that you have against him is that he does make some mental errors and force things a little bit, which, to be fair to him, he plays for Kentucky, so he has Kentucky wide receivers, so I'm sure there are times where he feels like, fuck it, I need to try and make something happen here, which is similar to Josh Allen at Wyoming, where I'm sure there were times where he was like, God, I gotta try and do something here.
I guess.
So I'm not saying Will Levis will reach that level, but I think currently with what the Packers have, Jordan Love is a pocket passer. He...
Barely.
He reminds me very much of Eli Manning, where... Just give me a second here. Good accuracy, decent decision-making, can't leave the pocket for shit. If you're expecting Jordan Love to run, it's not going to happen. I think Will Levis, at bare minimum... arm talent decision-making wise would equal Jordan Love, but he would also give the Packers the extra dimension of being able to run, being able to extend plays.
Right.
And I think he's a project worth taking on when at this point I think the project of Jordan Love has ended. I don't see it going anywhere. I think Jordan Love absolutely should be a backup quarterback in this league. He's talented enough. He's talented enough and smart enough. He can learn the offenses quickly enough to be a backup.
Yeah.
He deserves to be in this league. I just don't think he's able to be a starter, especially with the weapons on the Green Bay Packers. And you have Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, Aaron Jones, A.J. Dillon. I mean, what else can you realistically ask for as a young quarterback in preseason? He did get a chance against Dallas, and he threw that 70-yard bomb to Christian Watson, but it's also Christian Watson who's a speed demon, so... but we'll see. All I know, Packers need to trade Aaron Rodgers, move on from that.
All right.
I think regardless of what happens, 10-win maximum for the Packers this next year, I think that's realistic.
Definitely the maximum.
The Lions...
I think it's probably lower than that.
Yeah, the Lions are getting a lot better. I think the Lions could be a serious threat this year.
Huh.
The Vikings looked very good next year. I know they were kind of fraudulent, but Vikings look good. The Bears are obviously the Bears. But... yeah, so Packers, I think at best make the playoffs as a wild card team, and probably maybe they go on a Cinderella run, but probably lose in the first round if they make playoffs at all.
Yeah, for sure. All right. So
that was more of a rational fan rant than an irrational, but
I think so.
At this point with the Packers,
pretty well formulated.
At this point with the Packers, like,
yeah. Man, I'll tell you though, the Broncos are in a difficult situation this year. I mean, they'll be in a difficult situation. Don't kid yourselves, Broncos fans. We are going to be fighting an uphill battle for the next 5 years. And it starts with how much draft capital we've given up in order to acquire Sean Payton and Russell Wilson. So automatically we need them to be successful. We need them to be successful together. But even beyond that, I mean, John Elway gave up a ton of our draft capital by just drafting horrible players.
Paxton Lynch,
So,
Drew Lock.
So we just don't have a strong young core to our team. And I think one of the biggest things that a lot of people have been pointing and yelling at recently with the Broncos has been our general manager, George Payton. And to some degree, I think they're right. He made a really, really bad head coaching hire. And to a much larger degree, I think they're wrong. George Payton was never hired for his ability to identify coaches. He was never hired for his ability to trade well or to pick up free agents and woo them to our city. He was hired because he is one of the greatest prospect minds of our generation. And I think that if we are going to find success, it will largely be through the draft. And I think that somewhat we've almost doubled down on that by giving Russell Wilson this massive $48 million a year contract. Because now we are in a salary cap squeeze. We need to be very careful with every dollar that we spend if we want to find success, at least until the cap grows enough to give us more room. But more than that, we need to draft well and to get young assets in who are on rookie deals, who are fairly affordable, and who are able to step up into big roles. And I think George Payton is fully capable of doing that, but it's contingent on having draft picks. So what I want for this offseason is to sort of combo a couple of things together. I want to clear a little bit of cap space while acquiring a little bit of draft assets. And I think the biggest way that we do this is by trading Garrett Bowles. He is our starting tackle right now. He has had a really storied career, mostly negative at the start, but he's honestly turned into one of the most talented tackles in the league. And I think that we could maybe get a late first-round pick for him. And maybe we'd have to give up a third or a fourth to do so. But in order to do that, we are clearing like $17 million in cap space while also adding a young rookie drafted by a draft guru in George Payton who is able to turn that into something special. And I think that that is the biggest start and the biggest step that we can take. One of the things that we were looking at before Sean Payton arrived was trading Jerry Jeudy for a very similar looking thing. I think that's a horrible idea because he's sort of the opposite situation. He has yet to prove himself. I'm always a sell high, buy low kind of guy, especially when you have a GM who's able to buy low well. And so I'm glad that Sean Payton got in early enough to say, hold on to Jeudy. And maybe we'll see him move on from Garrett Bowles. Maybe we'll see him move on from a Dalton Reisner, who might be able to fetch you like a mid to late second round pick right now. There's not a lot of overrated guys on our defense, I think, but you can clean up a little bit of the offense while also sort of creating this opportunity for younger talent to come in.
Nice. I like it. So, a lot of course, with the Broncos right now, a lot more rumors flying around for them because they have yet to hire an OC or a DC as of right now. What do you think of the idea of Denver Broncos bringing in former Jets and Bills head coach Rex Ryan as their defensive coordinator?
I mean, he's got the history, you know. We have been infatuated these last 6 or 7 years with hiring the guys that have no history, with hiring the guys that are raw potential, but we're trying to find these next young talents to come in and take over this team and really develop into a really special head coach. And I think that this year we are going to very much pivot away from that. We've already done that with Sean Payton. We are looking at doing that with Rex Ryan or even a Vance Joseph. Not as big of a fan of Vance Joseph. Part of me wishes that we had held on to Ejiro Rivera, which is honestly a little bit of a home run swing on the DC. But he also came from our system. We saw really good things with him in our defense. But I don't think you can go wrong with Rex Ryan or with anyone that Sean Payton is going to be wise enough to hire. So
Yeah, for sure.
I trust Sean Payton with filling out the coaching staff. You want to talk NBA futures?
Yeah.
We're coming out of this All-Star break, and a lot of teams are riding high right now. A lot of teams are riding low. Honestly, in the West, most teams are riding low. You're seeing a lot of really poor records over the last 10 games in the West, which, as a Nuggets fan, I am loving. We have built a separation for ourselves. I put out a post recently that if the Nuggets hold their winning percentage for the rest of the season, they cannot finish worse than the 2 seed.
Yeah.
And the only way that they don't finish the 1 seed is if the Grizzlies win all but 2 of their games. So if we stay consistent, we are the 1 seed.
Yeah. Yeah.
So a little bit of a gap has opened up in the West. Meanwhile, the East has been crawling a little bit closer together.
Yeah, for sure.
With the Bucks creeping up on the Celtics, 10-0 in their last 10. You're seeing the
12-game win
Cavaliers.
streak.
Yeah, 12-game win streak. You're seeing the Cavaliers creeping up as well. A couple of teams sort of floundering right now, like the Nets, obviously, are not going to look as good in the second half after the trade deadline sort of annihilated them. But the landscape's going to look different in this latter half of the season. Evan, what do you think is going to change?
Yeah, I'll start in the West here. I think the West is far more compelling. I think to a certain degree, especially after the Kevin Durant and Kyrie trades, we probably both believe that there's more super teams in the West than there are in the East currently.
Sure.
That is for sure. In the West, I honestly see the Nuggets holding out. Mainly because the Nuggets are not the resting type. Michael Malone, Nikola Jokic, those guys are not the type to sit out and miss a game purely for load management, which, with the Nuggets' history of injuries, might be to their detriment. But I see them holding on to the 1 seed. I see the Suns currently at 4.5 games back on the Grizzlies, moving up into the 2 seed. I mean, shit, they're adding Kevin Durant to a team with Kevin Booker, Devin Booker, Chris Paul. They're going to get a lot better. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
They're going to be deadly. I see the Dallas Mavericks creeping up into 3rd there. I think the Mavs are now very dangerous, even though they lost some of that perimeter defense. Let's be honest. Nowadays in the NBA, if you can outscore the other team, that's really all that matters. So I see them moving up into 3rd. But outside of that, I see the Clippers holding on to that 4th seed. I think the Grizzlies will stay there in the 5th. And when I say this, they're all going to be within a few games of each other.
Yeah.
And the reason I see the Grizzlies, I see the Grizzlies dropping below
That's
the
a
Clippers.
big fall for the Grizzlies.
It is, but they're young.
They are.
And I don't like. Part of me feels similar to the Utah Jazz at the beginning of the year. I feel like there's just a certain point where they're going to hit their wall, and their luck is going to run out to a certain extent. They are a good team. Ja Morant is obviously phenomenal, but I just don't see them being able to hold on past these teams with all these veterans. And then, really up for debate on the 6th. Part of me wants to say the Kings hold on to it, but I really feel like the Warriors are going to be able to come out of this break healthy and in classic Warrior fashion, fight their way up out of the play-in tournament. I mean, the difference between the Kings and the Warriors right now is 3.5 games. I think the Warriors can make that up very easily. So I could see the Kings falling down into the play-in tournament. And then for the rest of the teams, I think the Pelicans stay there. And then I see the Timberwolves and the Thunder falling out of it, and I see them being replaced by the Lakers and the Blazers. That obviously might be personal bias, but I think the Blazers have finally started to hit their stride a little bit, figure things out. They have been hit by the injury bug a lot this year. They'll be healthy coming out of the break. Lakers, of course, made a lot of trades, and very big trades, but they're still very young, and I don't think they're good enough to get up into those
Very
tops.
old, man.
Outside of LeBron, I mean, D'Angelo Russell, they traded for a lot of young pieces.
They traded to get younger.
Yeah, they traded to get younger, but they're not good enough to get into the top 6. They'll make it to the play-in tournament after this because I think teams like the Timberwolves, the Thunder will realize they're better suited to tank and get a lottery pick rather than trying to make the playoffs and lose in the first round.
Yeah. All right.
So, What do you think on the West?
Man, I mean, like you, I think Nuggets stay to the top. They've just built up a 5-game lead on it. I think that the Grizzlies, I don't think that they'll fall all the way to the 5th seed because they have a decent lead on that at least. But I do think that they do not gain any ground on the Nuggets.
Yeah.
So, and they're the main threat to us right now. I mean, you got the Kings 8 games back, the Suns 9.5 games back. I don't think it's very likely that the Nuggets get caught right now. But some big movers that I do see in the West, I think that we're going to see the Kings start to fall a little bit. Mm-hmm. They've got a little bit of a harder strength of schedule in the second half of the season, as well as just... I mean, they aren't as complete of a team as some of these teams that are right behind them, like the Clippers, the Suns, the Mavericks. All 3 of those teams improved at the trade deadline, and all 3 of those teams are hungry for the playoffs and barely behind the Clippers or the Kings.
They're also the only team to give up over 115 points per game and over 500. So realistically, on offense, they've been just very hot and lucky, and that's probably going to start to fade away.
For sure. I mean, you'll see teams start to lock up a little bit more on defense and sort of turn it in that second half. Let's see. The Warriors, I think, are going to make a pretty big leap in this portion of the season. I mean, they are starting to age a little bit. I'm not sure how to figure out when they're going to get hit strongly by the age bug. Maybe it's right now. I mean, they're pretty far back in the standings right now at 9th overall, 500 record. But I do see them improving, making the playoff push, probably even evading the play-in tournament altogether.
Yeah.
I think that they can get the 6th seed with fairly easily. I see the Thunder starting to slip. I see the Timberwolves, I think. The Twin Towers just are not working in Minnesota right now.
They got rid of D'Lo.
They're also a little bit injured. They got rid of D'Lo. I think that they are one season away from maybe trying to blow it up.
Yeah.
I think I'm honestly with you on the Trailblazers. They are fairly young, but they're led by Damian Lillard, who is just not... He's a never say die guy.
Yeah.
The Trailblazers always make a push at the end of the season. They're going to get into the play-in tournament.
Nurkic will be back, yeah.
Nurkic will be healthy. Damian Lillard will carry them on his back until it is completely broken and he's forced to retire.
And I mean, they're only half a game back from the play-in tournament right now.
They are, yeah. I don't think that the Lakers make the play-in tournament.
Really? Okay.
No. They are... The West is so loaded, and I'm counting teams that I'm guaranteeing being in the playoffs. The Nuggets, the Grizzlies, the Clippers, the Suns, the Mavericks. Heck, I have to count the Kings. They're high enough up in the standings right now. The Warriors, I'm counting the Trailblazers in. We have 1 or 2 spots left in the play-in tournament with the Pelicans and the Thunder and the Timberwolves and the Lakers and the Jazz all competing. This is a tough conference. And the Lakers are not tough right now.
Yeah.
So I think that they don't even make the play-in.
Fair enough. Well, over in the East, I think the East is the total opposite. I really don't see things changing much at all. I see the Nets slipping because they traded Kevin Durant. I think the Bucks will overtake the Celtics. I see the Bucks being the 1 seed. They're on a 12-game winning streak. That team is deep. I think earlier in the season they were hit by kind of the injury bug a little bit. Also some Celtics luck to a certain extent. Bucks will overtake them. I think Cavaliers will stick in there. They have a decent team. Nets, I think will still make playoffs. I think they slip into the play-in tournament, though. That's mainly just because all the teams below them are still so much worse.
Yeah.
I think the Knicks will probably hover right about there. Maybe they slip into the play-in tournament, but I could see them making the top 6 as well. I think the Hawks will start to pick it up again here a little bit. Trae Young, DeJounte Murray, that team has a decent amount of talent. I could see them moving back up into the top 6 for sure. The Miami Heat just picked up Kevin Love. Who knows? Maybe that'll be kicking the butt to them a little bit to pick things up. But honestly, I kind of see the East staying the way it is. I don't really see
for the most part.
I don't really see the Bulls making a big push. I think everybody's about right where I see them ending, other than the Bucks moving up, Nets dropping down a little bit, maybe the Heat or the Hawks moving up. It's kind of just how it is.
The funny thing for me is, the play-in tournament will certainly switch up, but from my point of view, it doesn't matter. All of those play-in tournament teams will lose. Whereas in the West, you're going to have one of the Warriors, the Suns, the Mavericks, the Clippers, the Trailblazers in the play-in tournament, a massive threat to the 1 or 2 seed. It is my biggest fear as a Nuggets fan that we are going to face the Warriors in the first round.
Yeah.
And, that's going to be a threat. Whereas you look at all of these teams in the West, and, you struggle to name a player that's a threat, much less a team.
Yeah, the Celtics or the Bucks have to play the Wizards. Oh, wow, scary.
Yeah. But, a little shake-up at the top. I think the Bucks take the 1. I think the Sixers actually slide up to the 2, and the Celtics fall to 3. But other than that, it mostly stays the same. Nets obviously slip. I don't think we even really need to explain why.
Yeah.
But, yeah, the East just makes more sense.
I think that in terms of playoff predictions to the East is way easier to navigate as well. At least for me. The West, I think it's really anybody's game, especially now that you have the Suns being as powerful as they are, the Mavs being a bit more loaded, the Nuggets obviously, barring no injuries going into postseason, which always seems to be an issue for the poor Nuggets. Hopefully this year they can finally go in at full strength and be able to compete all the way through. But
that'll be something special.
But yeah, no kidding. But then this year in the East, in my mind, it's a race between the Celtics and the Bucks. Yeah. The reason being, obviously the Sixers have looked very good this year. Embiid has looked very good. But in my mind, the only consistent thing about the 76ers is that they're inconsistent. And I think James Harden has quite possibly been the biggest postseason disappointment of our generation. Each and every year, the one thing you can count on is James Harden floundering in the postseason. And he is their second best player on the 76ers. Joel Embiid is still going to get his.
Yep.
He's still going to score a lot. He'll still rebound well. He'll still get some assists. Still play good defense. But Giannis has shown he can score points on Joel Embiid. The Celtics don't have a center that they need to score points. So, Joel Embiid isn't going to be guarding Jason Tatum. So, the Celtics don't have to worry about that. James Harden doesn't play defense, so that's not a concern. Meanwhile, on the other end, the Bucks and the Celtics both have guys that can play defense on James Harden and could potentially shut him down. The other thing I like about them, they don't commit fouls.
Yeah.
That much. And James Harden's bread and butter is drawing fouls. And against the Celtics and the Bucks, that's going to be hard to come by. So I really think in the East it's a 2-team race between them. I really don't know who I would pick between the two of them. They each have pros and cons to them. They're both very deep rosters with good talent off the bench. Meanwhile, in the West, I have no freaking clue.
Yeah, right? It's going to be a fun year. Fun watching this whole thing turn out. But I think that's all we have for this podcast. Thank you, everyone, for tuning into the inaugural podcast. And I just want to end it by saying you can't win the MVP if you only made an all-star starter as an alternate. So, Jokic is the MVP. Good night, everybody.